Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Danielle Ball, and I'm a librarian in the Business and Economics Department at Los Angeles Public Library. Welcome to today's program, which is brought to you by the library and SCORE LA. Our topic is Hiring 101. Before I introduce today's presenter, I want to go over a few housekeeping items. First, just want to let you know that this program is being recorded, so if you miss any part of it or want to rewatch it or share it with friends and colleagues, it will be available right here on the library's YouTube page. Also, I want to invite our viewers to submit any questions that you have for our presenter. Please feel free to type your questions into the comment box at any time. We will save those questions for after the presentation when we will have a short Q&A session. And now I am pleased to introduce today's presenter. Anais Babajanian is a business and leadership coach with over 10 years of experience in accounting and operations. Prior to becoming a coach, she ran and grew an insurance agency and sold it in 2021 for 3 times revenue, with multiple offers in a competitive market. She has an extensive experience in the hiring and training process, as she believes that proper onboarding and retention of personnel is the most essential component in building a solid foundation for a thriving business. She has helped many business owners overcome the overwhelm and frustration associated with hiring so they can focus on growing their businesses. And now I'd like to pass the presentation over to Anais.
Thank you so much, Danielle. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you to everyone tuning in. Really excited to talk about this topic today. There's obviously a lot that goes into hiring. So this presentation is going to give you a really good overview of how to hire, when to hire, and why to hire, figuring out kind of that sweet spot, and also your risk appetite for hiring versus waiting. So I'll go ahead and start the presentation. The agenda for the presentation today, first it's going to cover the how of hiring. The first part being creating solid job descriptions and applications that attract the right candidates. Structuring the search and interview process in a way where you get quality candidates and you can sift through them in an efficient way. How to classify new hires, deciding whether or not to bring someone on as a full-time or part-time W-2 employee versus a 1099 contractor. Deciding on the right time to hire, depending on your time and the time and resources you have to dedicate to hiring and onboarding. And finally, calculating the cost and benefit of hiring based on your needs and your risk appetite. And lastly, I'll share some resources that are available and especially helpful if obviously you're a Los Angeles-based business or a California-based business. A lot of good info on like the legal implications. I do want to give a caveat that I'm not an attorney or an HR professional, so I'm not familiar about HR laws or, like discrimination, things like that. This presentation is really meant to be about kind of the operational side of hiring and what you need to do to bring someone on that is a fit for your business and your business needs. So start with the job description. Now there's obviously a lot of bullet points here. I don't want to bore you guys with some of the stuff that's pretty obvious. But first things first is a clear and concise job title. This can be challenging if you're a newer business because you might find that you need someone that can do customer service, but then when you bring them on, maybe you want them to do some account management as well. But you want to get really clear about that before you start trying to bring in applicants. It's going to make it easier for people to apply. And also you're going to be getting the exact skill set that you're looking for. And that kind of goes along with the second point here. Outline what their daily responsibilities are going to be and what their role is actually going to entail. So that way again, you market or you target a skill set that you actually want and that you can measure once you bring them in. The third point is something that I don't see too often in job descriptions, but that I found to be really important when I was running a team, um, is outlining what results or impact their job or efforts are going to contribute to, right? So if you're bringing someone in for customer service, then the why or the results that they're contributing to is your business's reputation and retention of customers, right? If you're bringing someone in as an engineer, right, then the impact is building something, right, is getting a product out the door. So think about what goal this person's role is going to contribute to for your business as a whole. The next one is pretty obvious, the technical skills that are required to perform the task successfully. Make sure to outline that. But what's not so obvious is the soft skills that are needed to succeed in the role. And obviously, every applicant is going to come to you and say that they're a hard worker, that they're a team player, all that good stuff. But you want to get really specific in the job description of really what you're looking for. Do you want someone who's scrappy? Do you want someone who knows how to take initiative? Do you want someone who can find resources on their own? Is going to be responsible for coming up with solutions? Those are things that you really want to highlight if you want this person to be able to work independently and, doesn't need to be micromanaged and being told what to do. The next point, and this is another thing that I've only seen in a few job descriptions that I've looked at in the past, is outline who this role is a fit for and who it's not a fit for. This is so important to weed out those applicants that you just know are going to waste your time and aren't a fit for the job that you're posting. And it makes it easier for people to say, yep, that sounds like me, or no, that does not sound like me. So this is a huge one, and you want to get as specific as possible for that as well. The next point that I think is really key is the type of environment that this person will be working in. So depending on the role, is this going to be a face-to-face, high client interaction type of job? Be sure to outline that. If it's something that's more on the back end administrative where they're going to be working more in a silo, be sure to highlight that. Basically, you want to share what the expectation around communication and culture is for this role that you're posting for. So people can say, well, I need more support. So I need to be in an environment where I can talk to people or I can ask questions. Those are the type of things that you need to think about when outlining the type of environment that this new hire is going to be working in. Then the last 3 points are pretty standard. What are the performance metrics and opportunities for career growth? This may not apply for every situation, but it should apply to most jobs that you post. After this person gets hired and if they continue to perform, what's the next step in the career within your organization? What can it turn into? Is it going to be a manager position? Is it going to be, a senior engineer position? Whatever it might be sure to highlight that because people want to know what comes after they get hired for this specific job. Then obviously compensation and benefits and your company's overview and vision. Give them an idea of what your company is about, what you're passionate about, what your why is, but also what your culture is like. That's the biggest differentiator really between you and someone else that could be hiring for the same role. One tip that I like to give people, and I know some people are still uneasy about using AI, but ChatGPT is a great resource for writing out this type of stuff. And honestly, with anything else, it's as good as the information that you provide it. So if you come up with some really good specific details of what you really want in a potential new hire, this is a great tool to use to kind of organize all of that and be able to present it in a way that resonates with potential candidates. So then we go to the job application. The first 3 points here are, I think, the most important questions to ask in a job application. And obviously, you're going to ask these within an interview as well. But I think this is a really good way of weeding out who's serious about applying for the job and who's not. The first one being, why do they want to work for your company? And you can expand this question even more to get to the root of what their why is and how working for your organization is going to help them realize that, right? So that's what you're trying to get out of, is what's in it for them, what makes this opportunity in particular unique to and aligned with the goals that they have for their career. The second question is an obvious one. What makes them more qualified than other candidates? This might be a question later, but something that I want to point out now is don't accept answers that are just like, I work harder than anyone else, because everyone is going to say that. You want to look for specific examples of how their experience and the way that they work and the energy that they bring into an organization, how that's different from other candidates. So just be mindful of that when you look when you're asking that question. Then the third point is, again, asking them to basically make the correlation between their previous experience and the responsibilities that are associated with this role. So again, I mean, you've noticed probably a trend here that you want to look for specifics with these questions. You want examples of exactly what tasks and what responsibilities they had before and how they apply and how they're going to bring value to the responsibilities they would have if they were hired for this role that you're posting. The rest of these questions are also pretty straightforward. If they need any accommodations to fulfill this role, be sure to ask them for that. Ask for references if you want. I always ask for references in my business. Some people are really good interviewers, but they may not be the best workers. So you always want to have some way of checking what their actual work ethic and experience was like. And also, depending on your need, you can include in the application to request it for their consent to run a background or reference check. Another key point for an application, I find that a lot of times the application is basically a regurgitation of basic information that you can find in their resume, where they went to school, what their employment history is. Don't bother including that information in the application if you already know where to find it in their resume, in the CV, or even on their LinkedIn profile. This application is meant to be almost like a pre-interview before this person comes in. So that's the mentality you want to have when creating the job application. And honestly, you can probably use ChatGPT to create this as well. But again, you're wanting to focus less on the logistical and technical information of their experience and more on the the soft skills that they had and kind of their why behind applying for this job. Things that you don't normally see in a resume. So once you kind of have your job application and your job posting ready to go and you're feeling confident about what you're looking for and it's specific and it's focused, you really want to structure your candidate search process in a way that's organized and also very clear and focused. I definitely have fallen into the trap of just going through every single resume that came in and asking just about anyone to come in for an interview. And after a while, the resumes just start to blur and the interviews all start to sound the same. So you want to set some parameters and also just some like structure around your candidate search process, because you have like 10 other responsibilities as a business owner apart from hiring. So it's natural that this is going to eventually lead to burnout if you don't organize it and set some boundaries around it. So the first thing here is to identify the job board or the forum that your ideal candidates use the most, whether that's Indeed or LinkedIn. Figure out what forum or job board most of these candidates are using, and be sure to post your information on there, and also promote it within your network, right? Put it everywhere, put it in your emails, on your company's email list. You never know who's going to find it and look at it. I say choose up to 3 sites to post on. You don't really want to do more than that because it just becomes overwhelming to keep track of all the different systems that are available, and tracking all the resumes, and your email inbox is probably going to start going insane. So I say choose a maximum of 3 sites to post your job posting on. And then set a schedule for checking, reviewing, and following up with candidates. So you want to be really present for this process. You don't want it to just be reactive. Oh, I got an email. Okay, let me look at it real quick. Okay, this resume looks okay. I have another call right now. Let me just ask them to come in. That happens more often than not. So you want to just really set aside a time block every single week of when you're just going to be totally focused on going through these resumes and inviting these people to interviews. Because you don't want to waste your time, and you also don't want to invite people in that really shouldn't have been invited, and it was only because you didn't take the time to thoroughly analyze that resume. So whether that's every Monday before your day starts, every Friday when your day ends, or Monday, Wednesday, Friday in the morning, pick a time, pick a certain amount of minutes or hours that you can dedicate to doing this. And that way it's done, it's there, and you can go on with your day and all your other responsibilities as you afterwards. I would also, depending on how many applicants you get, set a limit for the number of candidates that you'll invite to interview. And it may be tempting to just invite anyone that sounds really, really good. And there will always be good candidates out there that you might miss. But you can't really hold out until, you get that perfect person. And you're also making assumptions about who that perfect person might be. So just tell yourself, okay, for this month, I am only going to invite 20 people to interview. If they don't work out, then I'll start over. Whatever that number is, pick something that's realistic and that you can stick to, because it is going to intervene with your schedule and with your other meetings and other responsibilities and client interactions that you have. So because you want to be present in those interviews as well. The next thing is to set a deadline for when you want to hire, and be sure to communicate that to candidates. And this is also something you can include in the job posting of like, you're looking to hire ASAP, or you're looking to hire by July 1st. That way, it prepares them and they know what the expectations are. If they need to find a job sooner, then, it's not going to be a fit. I'd say the more flexible you can be, the better, but it's important to have some kind of a general guideline of like, okay, if it doesn't happen by June 1st, then I need to reevaluate. But it creates some accountability for you at the end of the day. The last thing here is to be sure to promote it within your network. I mentioned this in the beginning. Put it all over LinkedIn, in any local groups you're in, tell your friends and family, email it out to people. You honestly never know who's going to give you a good referral. The other suggestion I have here that's not a point, but maybe a good idea is if you have existing employees, ask them for referrals. If you have a good employee and you're like, oh, if I could just clone them, I'd be solid. Ask them for a referral. You never know who they know. This happened in my business actually. I had a really good employee, and we were looking to hire one more customer service rep, and she had a friend of a cousin who needed a job, and we hired her, and she actually ended up being a better employee than the one who referred her, surprisingly. So you never know. Always ask. And it's also important because you want the next person you hire to be someone that your team gets along with. Because regardless of how talented a new hire is, if they don't fit in with your company's culture, they're not going to be profitable for you because they're going to bring everyone else's productivity down. So it's just something to be mindful of. It's often some of the best ways to get a new hire, just to ask your team and expand from there. So then comes the actual interview process. And this may look different depending on the type of role you're hiring for and maybe the type of environment that you're bringing them into. But these are just some general questions that I always make sure to ask within an interview to really get an idea of what this person is going to behave like and how they're going to work if they were to be hired. First question is, how would they approach a problem that's unique to this role? And that kind of goes along to the second question, which is, how have they handled a mistake in the past that they made? Because that really gets into how they handle feedback, right? And how quickly they can bounce back, and also how receptive they are to admitting that they're wrong and improving themselves. Because that's something that is really difficult to teach, and it's really kind of an ego thing. So you want someone who has a curiosity and a learning mindset and doesn't get, offended or doesn't get demotivated if a problem or an error occurs. Again, goes along with my third question, just asking them directly how they handle feedback and critiques is huge. And then other question that I like to ask is to have them describe a successful teamwork experience and what their role in it was like. This is huge because this really gets into the details of how they interact with other people. Even if this is a position that is more independent or is more siloed, at the end of the day, they are going to have to interact with you or with other people. So you want to understand what their definition of good teamwork is before you bring them on. This next question is one that I really like to ask, which is, what do they need to succeed in this role? Now, this is different from asking them what accommodations they need, because that's physical. This is more about what resources or support they need in order to excel. So this is going to be the type of answers you're going to be looking for are, well, I need a manual, or I need a step-by-step process, or I need someone that I can ask questions to throughout the day, or I need to be left alone so that I can figure it out myself. That's what you're looking for with this question is this person someone that I have to provide a lot of resources and training for, or is this someone who prefers to figure things out on their own, and that's how they do their best work? That's what you're looking for with this answer, because it's going to make your life a lot easier should you decide to bring them on. And then obviously, lastly, ask them what their expectations are on salary, benefits, and a start date. Obviously, people are usually going to give you some kind of a range. It's up to you on how you want to negotiate. But again, important question to ask. You want them to understand, or you want them to know what their value is and be able to communicate it to you. Some other key tips around interviewing. First thing is letting them do most of the talking. You are not convincing them to join your company. They are selling themselves to you. And I don't like to use the word selling themselves, but it's more about them sharing what value they have, what experience they have, and how it can benefit the role that you're hiring for and how it can benefit your company as a whole. So you want them to take up as much time in the interview, making that very clear to you. Second thing is make sure that they walk away with a clear understanding of your company's culture, your company vision, and the expectations that you set, not just for this role, but for your team as a whole. Again, this is something that you can't really teach. Either someone fits in culturally or they don't. So you want to make sure that they understand what the expectations are, just from a soft skills perspective, from a collaboration perspective, should they get hired into your company. This next point here is, I think, really critical as well. You want to focus on learning about what they're willing to do, not just what they're capable of, because will and motivation is not something that you can see off of a resume or off of anyone's technical skills. And it's certainly not something that you can teach. So even if someone maybe doesn't have all of the qualifications from a technical standpoint, if they show you that they're willing to learn and they're willing to do whatever it takes to reach that point that where they can perform the tasks of this role well, then that often than not is going to be a better hire than someone who has a perfect resume. So that's what you really want to focus on understanding coming out of the interview. And another big tip here is hire slow and fire fast. And this is easier said than done. I dealt with this myself. When I was running our agency, we actually lost both of our employees within a week for two completely different reasons. One had found another job, but the other one decided to go back to school. So it was just me and my business partner, and we needed probably 3 or 4 employees in that office. And now we basically just had 2 as the owners. And we were desperate because our business had been growing really steadily at that point. And we were starting to scale. So we were totally backed up. And I made the mistake of hiring the first person that we interviewed. And not only was her work ethic not great, but she wasted so much of my time with training her and answering questions and onboarding her that we actually ended up getting even more backed up as a result of, making that rash decision. So take your time. If you know it's going to be a while and you know it's going to affect your client relationships, communicate that to them, adjust your expectations. Unfortunately, it's a cost of doing business, but it's going to save you time and energy in the long run if you take it slow and if you're really present in this process. So don't be tempted to hire just anyone, especially when you're feeling a sense of desperation. So this next section is deciding whether or not to bring someone on as a W-2 employee or as a 1099 contractor. So there are some key differentiators between the two that I think will help you decide what makes the most sense depending on the role you're hiring for. Typically, W-2 employees need some more structure and supervision to be successful in the role, meaning that they're dependent on you to provide the resources and the guidance needed to perform the task correctly. The second point is that typically an employee will form integral relationships with your other team members and with clients, because the tasks that they're responsible for have long-term impacts and costs, and they contribute to the company's key goals and vision and kind of overall objectives. And also, the technical side is that they require benefits and protections for the work performed because they're integrated kind of fully into your organization. On the other hand, independent contractors typically work independently and they're in control of their own tasks and schedule. They know what they need to do. They have what they need themselves already to do those tasks correctly. And they are the ones that communicate to you typically when things can get done and when they can't get done. They don't typically form key relationships with your employees or with clients. Typically, their relationship is just with you as the business owner, and they're providing some sort of professional service that's very specific that you don't really have the money to hire an in-person for. So that could be like a marketing consultant or an attorney. Well, an attorney is a professional service, but it might be a marketing consultant. It might be someone that, helps your employees do specific things. Um, a really like classic one is hiring out a virtual assistant to maybe help you with scheduling, with, client follow-ups. A lot of people outsource their accounting department, or even their customer service department. So these are important tasks within your organization, but they don't have an impact directly with other clients or with employees. It's a specific task that they're responsible for, that they know how to do, and that they take care of on their own. So again, it's a specialized service that maybe it's sometimes difficult to find in typical candidates, but it's usually one task specifically that they're in charge for, one or two. Their impact is short-term and it's usually project-based work. So again, it's very specific to one specific vertical of your business. And obviously, lastly, they have their own means of obtaining protection and benefits, so you're not responsible for providing them with any of that. So the next question is figuring out when you should hire. And this is kind of an impossible question for business owners, but these are some questions that I think are helpful if you're in that position of, well, I could really use some help, but I don't know if it's worth the money right now. So the first question is asking yourself as a business owner, what is your ideal role within your company, right? Are you an operations person? You want to make sure everything is running well. You want to make sure your employees have what they need. You want to be more of a back-end person, or are you the visionary? Are you the partnerships person, right? Do you want to be going out there and finding opportunities to collaborate, to partner with, new other businesses and scale your organization? Figure out what the tasks are that are associated with this role and outline them. And that's basically the question is, what are your strengths and how can you, what are the tasks associated with those strengths that contribute to your company's overall goals? So then once you have that outlined, you can ask yourself, is the future growth of your company dependent on you doing this type of work, and how? So another way of asking this question is, am I slowing down my business's growth by not doubling down on my strengths, right? If you're spending most of your time just keeping things afloat, then the answer to that is yes, right? And then the how question is, well, you could be out there bringing in customers or forming partnerships, and you're not because you don't have the right number of employees, you don't have the right support to be able to step away and be able to work on the business. So then you ask yourself, what are the tasks that you're doing now that need to be delegated in order for you to have the time to do this work, right? What are you doing more of that you need to be hiring someone to do? And then the next question, and this is a tough one for a lot of business owners to answer, which is, are you ready to let go of these tasks? This is a huge question because a lot of business owners start off by themselves. They're doing everything. They obviously know how to do everything really well. But there comes a time where you have to kind of redefine what good enough is going to be for certain tasks in order to be able to grow. So then once you acknowledge that and accept that, then you have to ask yourself if you can afford the time and resources that are needed to train someone else to do these tasks. And honestly, you can always make time for that. It's just a matter if you're willing to commit to it. So if the answer is yes to these questions, then you've reached your breaking point and it's time to hire. And I always say it's better to hire before you feel like you really need it, like before you're at that critical mass moment of, oh my God, I'm drowning, because then you're not thinking clearly. You're just trying to stay above water. You want to hire when you're treading, right? You're still above water. And you just need someone else to act as like another life floaty to bring you up so that you can lead the team, right? So just something to be mindful of. This is really just for you guys to use to do like a cost benefit analysis of bringing someone on. This is really meant to be a way for you to analyze what your risk appetite is for bringing someone on, and also how much time and money you're willing to temporarily give up for potential long-term benefits. So the obvious costs of hiring someone are recruitment costs, putting up that job posting, the time you spend on interviewing, the time you spend on going through resumes, obviously salary, benefits, and resources for training and development is a big cost. The other cost that is hard to measure, but it's probably the biggest one, is delayed return on investment due to the time you spend on onboarding. And this really is going to vary on who you hire and how quickly they're able to get up to speed. So again, this is why, being really diligent with the application and interview process, it gets you to that ROI place much faster. It also depends on the quality of the training that you provide, right? Which is a whole separate conversation, but these are all things to consider. Potential cost also is the loss of time and resources, so they don't end up being a good fit. Like I mentioned before, it happened to us. Not only did we lose the money and the time that we spent on hiring her for that short amount of time, and the time I spent training her, but it stunted our growth for a few weeks, because then we were even further backed up, and I couldn't service customers, or I couldn't bring in more customers during that amount of time, which resulted in a loss of potential revenue. Another cost that's a little bit more qualifiable is a negative impact on other employees or the company culture. Even if you end up firing that person, sometimes the effects of just their presence and energy there are still felt after they leave, because your employees are thinking like, well, how could they bring someone in like this? Like, why would they bring someone in like this? Does that mean that, what I have to bring isn't valuable? Should I start, slacking off because this is the expectation now? So it could have a negative impact on your other employees because they may think that your expectations have changed. And also any legal compliance and taxes that are associated with hiring is another factor to consider. But, the potential benefits are obviously huge with hiring. Your team overall becomes more productive. your operations are more streamlined and efficient because you have more people checking in and making sure everything runs smoothly. You probably get enhanced service and quality because you have more people pitching in, you have more people having face-to-face interaction with clients so that they get more time and they don't feel like they're being rushed through transactions. Because you have a team, then you can go out and bring in business and generate more revenue and grow your business as a whole. If you bring in the right person, sometimes they bring in really good energy and they improve the company culture because they have this fresh perspective, and they kind of renew the motivation of your team and for you too. And the most important benefit, I think, is it gets you closer to working on your business and not in your business. And ultimately, that should be your role as a business owner, regardless of, where you are on your business journey, right? You're the one who started it. You're the visionary. You're the one who is passionate about growing it. So that's really what you should be focusing on. And having a good team behind you allows you to do that. So these are just some resources that I put together that have some good information on hiring, again, more technical and legal support. The California Chamber of Commerce has a lot of great resources, not just for hiring, but just logistical things for business owners to think about as a whole. The California Labor and Workforce Development Agency, this is a great website for checking about things like compliance or discrimination or hiring practices. The same goes for the California Employment Development Department, another great resource for checking, those more technical questions. Again, same with the California Department of Fair Employment and Housing, making sure you don't get in trouble with any employees. Indeed also has some great resources when it comes to hiring and what to look for in candidates and how to sift through resumes and applications. And I also mentioned this before, ChatGPT, again, it's a great resource for just honestly brainstorming what you look for in someone. That's what I use it for mainly in my business. It's like a brainstorming partner of getting out of my own head and, having it outline and organize my thoughts. So that's really all I have for today. I hope you guys found this helpful. I had a lot of fun here. As Danielle mentioned before, I'm a business and leadership coach. If you guys have any questions, feel free to email me. My email is right here, anais@anais.coach. The QR code just takes you to my Calendly page if you want to book a quick call with me. I'm happy to be a resource for you guys, and thank you again for having me.
All right, thanks so much, Anais. The whole presentation was really helpful, really great advice and recommendations. For me personally, I've never been a business owner. I've never had to hire, but I have been a job seeker many times. And so I especially appreciated some of the recommendations you gave in the beginning when you were talking about putting together the job description, the job posting, and being very clear about things like who is and who is not a good fit, being very clear about the timeline of when you're going to make the decision. I think that you are presenting from the perspective of the small business owner and trying to reduce their time being wasted, but those things will also very much help reduce the job seeker's time being wasted. And I think that if everybody followed those recommendations, it would just create such a better hiring experience for everyone. So I really appreciated that. But again, the entire presentation was wonderful. So we do have some questions. So I'm going to go ahead and start with those. The first one, it was mentioned to choose up to only 3 sites for posting jobs. Any recommendations on choosing those 3 sites?
Sure. So I'll kind of answer this 2 ways. I don't know if you're asking for recommendations on sites to post on, or how to choose the sites. I'd say my experience with my current clients is that LinkedIn is 100% the number one job, not job board, it's not a job board, but a website to post on. Honestly, even larger companies aren't even bothering with their own websites anymore. They're just posting on LinkedIn because it's grown significantly, especially in the last few years. So I'd say regardless of what you're hiring for, post it on LinkedIn. Indeed, obviously, it's another big one that I'd recommend to post on. I'd say I think there's another one that I'm forgetting the name right now. But ZipRecruiter, yes, ZipRecruiter is another one that is used quite often. So those are kind of my top 3 recommendations. But if you're asking for kind of how to choose those sites, I'd say honestly, type in the job title that you want to post for and see where it's posted and post on there. That's the best way to figure out where to post.
That's great because there's probably industry specific job
Correct.
boards as well. So,
Yep.
okay, great. Okay, another question. What are some job application or interview red flags to look out for in potential candidates?
So the first thing that comes to my mind is someone that's giving really vague answers that are really only talking about their work ethic. And also, it kind of just sounds, I hate to say this, like used car salesman-y when they're responding to questions where they're saying things like, you know, I was number 1 employee here and I worked harder than everyone else and I know I can do anything I set my mind to. While all that might be true, it's not specific, right? And so if they say that, ask them, okay, can you give me an example, right? You want specific, like just things that back up these claims that they're making. So I'd say the biggest red flag is like broad claims with nothing to back them up is the first red flag. The second red flag is like if they're getting really short 1 or 2 word answers, and maybe they're answering the question, but they're not giving you anything tangible. That's another big red flag for sure. I won't go over any obvious ones. Like if they come looking like they're tired and they're slouching and they don't really look like they want to be there, or on Zoom, if they look distracted, that's, I think, another big red flag. Also, another red flag that isn't really talked about a lot, but if they don't ask you any questions about the business, your business, or the role, or like what the expectations are around the role, that's another big red flag because high performers are going to want to know what they're walking into. So if they don't ask you any questions about the role or your company or the culture or the other people that work there, that's a huge red flag as well.
Okay, great. Thank you. We do have a few more questions. I just want to invite if there's any viewers who still want to submit a question, there's still time. We have a few more minutes, so please type them into the comment box and I'll go ahead and ask the next one. How do I make my small business stand out to high value candidates if I am not able to afford paying higher salaries like some larger companies?
This is a really good question. This is definitely something that a lot of small business owners face. And honestly, the biggest thing that I think differentiates working for a smaller business or a startup versus a bigger company is that you have more opportunities to move up in the organization and you have more opportunities to have an impact. And so as a business owner, the way you make yourself stand out is to make that clear in your job application and when you're interviewing the candidate. If that is something you want within your small business, which honestly you should want someone that wants to have a big impact within a small organization. So I would really highlight that. Along with just having an impact, a lot of times you can provide potential candidates with the opportunity to take initiative, right? And just more flexibility too. I think that's another big thing that small business owners have to offer, is that because they're small, because they're nimble, and it's a small team and you can kind of talk to each other very easily, flexibility is a huge factor in whether or not someone goes to a larger company or to a smaller one. I have a lot of friends that left large corporations to work for smaller ones because they just felt like a cog in a machine, right? Um, so I think highlighting that that's what makes you different is going to help someone kind of substantiate that pay cut that they would get.
Right. Fantastic. Okay, so I have one more question. Again, for any viewers, I see a few of you out there. If you have any questions, please submit within the next few minutes, but go ahead and ask this one. Once a candidate is hired, what are some effective onboarding strategies to ensure they are integrated into the team successfully?
So apart from the basic training and support, first of all, make that as specific as possible. I think that's the biggest thing, is setting them up for success, making things very clear from the beginning what the expectations are. Also make clear what the communication expectations are. Who are they going to report to? How are they going to report to them? Who are they going to interact with? Who do they ask questions of? How do they ask them questions? What mediums do they use? It sounds kind of repetitive and maybe overkill, but I think the communication piece, honestly, is the most important strategy to implement in your onboarding process, because honestly, technical skills can be learned. The technical aspect of the job is the easiest part, honestly. But the communication and gelling with the team and getting acclimated with the culture and the environment, that is what takes longer. So I think if you put that at the forefront, that will help them integrate into your team successfully. And also another thing is prepare your team before that new hire even walks into the door. Tell them, here's how I want you guys to interact with this person. Here's what I want you to communicate with them. Make sure everyone is on the same page so that they're not getting different information from one team member versus another. You guys, it's not just you onboarding them, your entire team is onboarding them. And that's the mentality you need to go into when bringing anyone else on.
All right, fantastic. Well, I don't see any more questions. So yeah, we made good time, and Anais, thank you so much. It was awesome. We'll go ahead and start wrapping up. I just again want to thank our presenter so much. Thank you to our viewers that joined us today, or if you're watching this after the fact, I hope this was helpful. As a reminder, the presentation will continue to be available here on the library's YouTube channel. I'm going to share the URL real quick to our library calendar, online calendar. I want to let everybody know that April is Financial Literacy Month here at the library. We have a lot of free in-person and virtual programs to help you with your financial goals throughout the month. And you can find out about those programs on the online calendar, which the URL is right there on screen. So again, thank you so much for our presenter, and thank you so much to everyone. I hope everyone has a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Bye.